It's practical product management, where we talk about product management being practical instead of theoretical. There's lots of great books on product management and how to do it right. But quite frankly, product management happens in context, right?
Right.
Okay. So today we want to talk a little bit about this is probably not just a product topic, but I think it does apply to product management. We want to talk a little bit about what happens in our minds and in our teams when people leave, when people decide it's time to move on to something else, whether we leave them or they leave themselves. But more on the they leave themselves side. I think I haven't told you this story before, but I had an engineer. Hey, Raul. I had an engineer who, when he decided to leave the company, the person I was working for was offended. Like, how dare he leave you hanging? How what you've done so much for him. You've been so helpful to him, and how dare he leave you hanging? And I was like, what? And so we had this back and forth, and I said, he's done everything there is to do on my team. I can't keep him interested anymore. I don't have a big enough problem for him. And it made me think when that was happening, and now when I look back on it, it makes me think that sometimes when someone decides to leave, we feel like they're breaking up with us instead of just going to do something else. What do you think?
I mean, so I think I align with your point of your philosophy more than perhaps the person that you knew in the past.
Right.
I actually see every person that I work with as a point in time.
Yeah.
We have this moment together, whether I'm reporting to you or you're reporting to me or we're peers,
Yeah.
and it will not last. It's temporal.
Yeah.
So how do we help each other
Yeah.
grow in this moment? How do we help each other learn? And most of the people, I mean, pretty much everybody that's ever worked for me, I will tell them this flat out, like, this is a moment in time. It's not going to be forever. My goal in my job is to help people grow on their career paths. So
Right.
obviously, you have to deliver on behalf of your company and your job, but my obligation is to do that and
Yeah.
help people. I expect them to leave me.
Right. Right. I mean, most of the companies, and I used to say this a lot in the last couple companies I worked for, most of the people who come to work for us are not coming to us to retire. They're
Yeah.
young. They're coming to learn something. They're coming because they're interested. It's a challenge. They like who they talk to. They like the product, but they're not coming here to retire.
Yeah.
And when we treat them as though they are, then we will be offended when they decide to retire early, right? Like instead of sticking with us through whatever, right? What do you think about so we spend a lot of time as leaders trying to figure out like how to reduce churn when we have a high churn rate on our team, or how to create the right culture that people will want to invest in and stay. But at the same time, to your point, it's temporal and
Yeah.
people will leave. So how do you balance that? How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, how cool is it to be able to have that conversation with someone?
Yeah.
Like we both know this is not forever.
Yeah.
So can we just have an open conversation about what's working for you, what's not
Yeah.
working for you? Is this working for your family? What can I do? And then I can have realistic conversations about, yeah, like that. I understand your career path. And to
Yeah.
be clear, I'm not going to have that this year.
Yeah.
I might have it next year,
Right.
but here are the things I do have.
Right.
And here are some of the ways I think they could help and or not. But if you're ready to go and you're ready to take that next leap, how can I help you also take
Right.
that next leap? And
Right.
I just, I mean, honestly, Leah, I think I've seen people come back to me over time because
Mhm.
they trusted me to be honest and open with
Yeah.
them. I don't
Yeah.
being able to anticipate churn, um, it actually makes you a better leader. It makes
Yeah.
you more able to manage your capacity and understand where people's heads are at. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I actually think the notion that someone owes us, um,
Yeah.
they owe me their loyalty, or they
How
owe me.
dare, how dare that person leave you? What?
Very offensive.
Yeah.
It assumes they owe us something more than the time they give us
Yes.
in exchange for the money that the company gives them. Like this is a transactional relationship, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what comes to my mind is that I mean, and I know that you're the same way. I care about building a culture for my team that has empathy, that has concern, that they get to bring their whole self. They get to have fun. They get to work hard and run fast if that's what they want to do, right? Like I care about building that environment. And I think that this conversation about what do you want and where do you want to be and when will you be ready to go try that happens better in that environment.
Yeah.
If I have a harsh environment where I am just riding you, like a pony to get what I want, you are going to leave me and I will be surprised, right? Or I won't be, right? Like you're just going to show up one day and be like, hey, by the way, I'm quitting. And you're like, whoa, what? Whereas I am in the teams that I've led over the years, I have very rarely been surprised when someone has come to me and said, hey, I've got an offer somewhere else. And it usually sounds like that. Hey, I need to tell you something, right? And you're like, oh, okay. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I thought that was going to happen this year,
Yeah.
right? That happens for me in the context of that high empathy, highly engaged, high touch kind of environment more because we've built a relationship where you'll tell me,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And I think that, like, to take it even a step further, I think some of my favorite conversations have been where I've been able to connect someone inside my network,
Yeah.
or say, let's talk about the role you're going to go after next. And how do we
Yeah.
sort of talk about the work you've done in a way that
Yeah.
helps you get that new experience?
Yeah.
Or even like, tell me about the new role.
What do you
What
want?
are you excited about it? How does it help you
Yeah.
grow?
Yeah.
I always want to end a relationship in a way that I'm excited about the person's future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
No, and that's what's so funny about this particular story I told you. When Raul came to me, I kind of saw it coming, right? Like I said, he had done I'd given him anything he said. Hey, can I try this? I'd be like, yes, yes, yes. I was trying to keep him engaged anywhere he'd go because he was great for the culture of the team through the pandemic, all of that. But when he came to me and said, listen, I think I need to find something else. I was like, what do you want to do? And he was like, what? And I was like, what do you want to do? Let me help you find a job. I was like, I want you here, but I also understand that I don't have anything for you. So what do you, and he was like, oh, I want to do this. And so the job he has today was a direct introduction from me.
oh, I
I
love
gave
that.
him like 2 introductions in a space that he was looking for. And I was like, see if either of these fit, I'm happy to tell them how great you are. Right. And,
I love that.
and that was offensive to the leader who told me, how dare he leave you, right? That was offensive that I was like, yeah, I helped him find the role he's going to because he's great and I know some great people who could use a great guy,
Yeah.
right? And I don't have anything. I can't engage his brain the way I need to. Like he had done all the things, right? And like I said, but if I was doing something later on that he was interested in, he would come work for me again and I would take him again, right? In
Exactly.
a heartbeat, right? So, I think, or I'd work with them or whatever. Like I 100%. I also think that there's something to be said for even when someone isn't a fit for my team, when I know that they aren't going to make it, like it's a bad fit, it's not working out, this is not the right place for you. I've had plenty of conversations even then that have been like, this isn't working. And I want to help you find something that will work. What do you want?
Yeah. I think, listen, I do believe we should treat people with empathy and
Yeah.
kindness. And usually when it's not working, everybody knows it's not working. It's not a surprise. And so when you finally sit down and say, how does this feel to you? Because to me, this doesn't feel like it's working very well. And I feel like it just hurts
Yeah.
everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's usually such a relief just to talk about it,
Yeah.
that it really unlocks a whole conversation about
Yeah.
what needs to be true in order for everybody to feel like this is going to work, whether
Yeah.
it's like separating or like whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
No, and I
nobody's
think, I mean, I can be honest that I haven't always handled it perfectly. I haven't always done it beautifully, but the times when I have felt the best about letting someone go, it's been when I've been able to sit down with them and say exactly what you just said. This doesn't feel right. Are you happy? Like, we know what's happening here. And what's fascinating is that most of the time those people then opt out, right? Because they're like, yeah, I yeah, you're right. I need to find something else. And you can have a really nice parting instead of this like, and you're fired, right? Like, so, and especially in environments like Europe where you often can't just fire somebody, right? You've got to either pay them to go away or whatever. But even that conversation of like, this isn't working for me, so we're gonna have to have a very different conversation.
yeah.
A lot of people will be like, yeah, okay, that's true. Let's figure this out. Like, yeah, you're right. I also don't want to stay somewhere that it doesn't fit. So what do we
No
do?
one wants to stay in a job that they think hurts them
Right.
or they feel like they like
Right.
the few times that I've found myself somewhere where it really didn't fit,
Yeah.
I knew it. I also hated it.
Yeah, exactly. You're like grateful that the other person, when you tell them, is like, yes, thanks, great. Like,
Right? Like we all knew this was bad. You were just
yeah,
trying to be nice to me. Like
yeah,
don't be nice,
yeah,
be straight. Not
yeah.
no.
Or like we said before, sometimes I've said, I've decided to do something else, and the person is like, everyone else is like, did they try to get you to stay? And I'm like, no, because we both knew.
Yeah.
Like, I don't threaten. I never threaten. If I'm
No.
leaving, I'm leaving. Right? Like, it's never a threat. I've never done that. Right? If I tell you I'm out walking out the door, you better trust my words.
Yep.
Right? Like, because I'm walking out the door. And when I start saying it, it's usually 6 months to a year before I'm like, I'm thinking I might want to do something like this. And I'm giving you a hint of find me something like that, or I'm going somewhere else. So that when I finally say, hey, I've decided to leave, the other person's like, yeah, you know,
Sucks.
yeah. And I want that same when it's me. I want that same, because to your point, when it no longer fits, it no longer fits. It doesn't have to even be terrible. It just doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's just
know?
I mean, it's not a damnation of the culture or the company or the
Right.
person. It just
Right.
like these are you spend more time at work
Yeah.
than you do at home, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't hurt. I have
Right.
a question for you.
Yes.
I have two questions for you. The
I'm
first
ready.
okay, the first is like, what do you think drives that sense of I don't want to go so far as to say like obligation or ownership or but like something's driving people to be offended when someone
Yeah.
leaves.
Well, I do think in the sort of founder space or at the executive level, certainly the founder space, sorry, founders, they often feel very precious about their company, and therefore believe that we should all feel very precious about working at their company, and forget that what we're doing is a damn job. Like, I don't own the company. I'm not going to make as much when you sell it or IPO as you are. I'm just here to do a damn job. Right. And I might love that damn job, but it's just a job and I can go love a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. So I think sometimes like founders, executives can get a little precious. Uh, I also think that for executives and leaders, people who are in it, when you're working hard at something, it can feel like an accusation for someone else to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Often, if we're hurting and are struggling, and someone else is like, yeah, I'm opting out. I don't want to do this anymore. Then we're like, how dare you? How dare you leave me here?
How
Right?
dare you not hurt with me?
Yeah, I'm hurting. Why do you get out? Right? So I think that can happen. And then I think there are good leaders. So I think there's a few of these things, right? I think there are good leaders who really try to craft a space for their teams. And when someone doesn't want to be in that space anymore, it feels personal, instead of like you and I saying like, I craft that space so that you have a healthy space, not so that you live there for the rest of your life. That's a different model. And then I think there are bad leaders who don't craft that kind of space. And so when someone's like, I'm out, I'm done, then it's a mirror.
Mm.
of like, I've built a shitty space and they don't want to be here anymore. It depends on why the person's leaving, right? To some degree. But so I think there's a series of things that can happen that cause people to feel offended, right?
Yeah.
Does that
No,
resonate?
I wholly agree. I wholly agree. I think that the more space you have for these conversations, the more space you hold for these conversations, the more space you hold for seeing someone else as a fully formed human,
Yeah.
the less offended you get because you realize that's not
Yeah.
a damnation, unless you've like truly built an awful culture, and then maybe it's a bit okay.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, I
But I mean, don't you also think that that's part of what I think sometimes when we're doing performance evaluations or reviews or calibration, we can lose sight of that there's a fully formed human in that spot that we're talking about. And so
100%.
when I'm calibrating humans against one another and with one another, I'm also thinking about, listen, I need to have some honest discussions with these different people, and there needs to be space for that honest discussion. And we need to talk about if it's working or not working and what we need.
Yeah,
It's not, I'm going to punish so and so, right? Or I'm going to show that guy. Like, if you're doing that, quit your job.
yeah.
If you're
I
calibrating from a place of meanness, get the hell out of your job.
well, and I
Right?
also calibration calibration is about how the person is performing at the tasks you've laid out for them compared
Yeah,
to relative tasks of other people at the same level. I,
exactly.
I think that I will tell you, I think people do calibration really wrongly. I mean, I have personally had someone question my quality, integrity, and respect in a review.
Wow.
I had a difficult meeting with some peers once, and it came through in a quarterly review that I didn't have any respect, and
Wow.
I actually feel like that is a toxic byproduct of a
Yeah.
review process, because you're not talking about my actions in an instant
Yeah.
that were were seen and received by others in a particular way and
Yes.
giving me coaching on how to
Yeah.
act and react in a situation with those humans. You're telling me
Yeah.
I have no respect.
Well, it's an
Uh,
attack on your core values instead of a statement about a situation where you behaved in a way.
yeah.
And if they
I,
think you have a core value problem, that's a very different conversation than let's talk about your review.
yeah. That's actually, it's a, yeah, it was a, I found it very offensive. So I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. I think it's very interesting, the calibration process, and people management process.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's not really a company value anymore to look at the whole person, right? I know, like years and years ago. I mean, even my father didn't like stay with a company his whole life.
Yeah.
He was a teacher, but it's not like you stay with one company your whole life and you get a pension. They don't
Right.
actually care about the humans to
Right.
a large degree. Again, I call it a transactional relationship, but I think it
Yeah.
is a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
Um, you said something earlier, Leah, about like when you resign, or when someone else resigns. When someone resigns, did you try to save them? Um, I would love to talk about that in particular, because my
Yeah.
personal philosophy is, once someone's decided to tell you, they're already gone.
Yeah.
I don't I don't ever try to save people, because the decision really has been made.
Yeah.
And you can stave this off for a period of time, but they're gone. They've already chosen something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
What's your philosophy around that?
No, I agree. Because if they come to me and say, I'm leaving, I have this other job offer and I'm going to go, and they are expecting me to save them, that's a conversation they should have had with me about how they were feeling before we got to this day. Same for me. If I show up and am telling, if I can't think of a time when I've ever done this, but I'm trying to think if that's true. I can't think of a time that I've ever resigned hoping that someone would make me a counter. I was just hoping we could get out of this nice and clean and not hurt each other's feelings when I resigned. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I was always hoping for. Like, how do we get out of this? Um, and I, but you're the person has already been by the time I get to that decision, so if it's me, if I just use myself, by the time I get to that decision, I have been wrestling with that for weeks, months, maybe a year, right? Going back and forth, thinking about why I'll look, then talking to people that I'm excited to talk to, and starting to feel a sense of, oh, it could be different over there, and I might do that, get to do this and that. You now can't offer me that hope and that excitement, and that, unless there's magic somewhere that you haven't told me. And why are you offering me the magic now?
Yeah.
Right? When I left Amazon, when the senior leadership team found out, suddenly all the jobs in the world fell out of the sky. And do you want this one? Do you want this one? Do you want this one? And I was like, no, because I wanted those jobs 6 months ago and you wouldn't give them to me. Right. And so I was like, no. And I'm not bagging on Amazon. It was just like, and God love them for wanting me to stay. Right. But at the same time, jobs fell from the heavens that weren't my job. And so it felt like too little too late.
Yeah.
On both sides, right? I didn't approach those couple of people and they didn't approach me. And so it was too little too late.
Yeah.
And so
I think
I 100% agree with you.
that example right there is why being able to have a dialogue with the people that choose to work for you. Hold on. They choose to
Yes.
work for you.
Yeah.
So being able to have a dialogue about, is this fulfilling? Is it stressful? What are you thinking? And then especially for the people that you do want to stay in the company because they add value. Maybe they don't stay working for you.
Yeah.
How are you constantly looking for what's next, what's different? So I think we talk a lot about like, you know, how do we performance manage people, or how do we help people that are struggling or people that need coaching? Everybody needs to be considered as a whole person.
Yes.
And you need to be investing in the people that you want to stay.
Yeah.
Because, being static or stagnant, not very many people come in just
Right.
being like, I'm going to move this paper from here to here. I'm going to be
Yeah.
satisfied with that. Now, having said that, I've had people in my groups that that's all they want. They don't
Yeah.
want more. They're dealing with a lot of pressures outside of work. They're
Yeah.
good at their job.
Yeah.
And I also think it's really unfair to pressure them up or out. Like, they're great.
Totally. Totally. If they do good work in the spot they're in and you need that work done and they're happy and you're happy, right?
Yep.
Like off we go.
But
Right.
you'll never know unless you have the conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about the whole person. Like, we forget. So sometimes I think in general in businesses, we infantilize our teams.
Yep.
They become children. P.S. It's not a family. It's never been a family. It's never going to be a family.
Nope.
Right. You can be friends. You can love working together. You can be great colleagues. Right. But this isn't your family. And those are not your children.
No.
They are your employees. They are there to do a job. They are on a team. Right. And when we infantilize people, we won't have conversations with them like grown-ups.
Yeah.
These are grown-ass people. I am a grown-ass person. You are a grown-ass person. We're going to have a grown-ass adult conversation. Right? And that's when things are hard and when things are great. And so for me, I really think about the people I lead as managing the whole person, which means that when they are struggling, I say, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is not what's happening here is not what I'm used to. So what's happening? Right.
Yeah.
I only notice that because I'm managing the whole person, not their tasks. It's
Yeah.
also the reason why, like we were saying, like when someone says like, I really want to do something else, I'm like, let's find you something else. Who do you want to talk to? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I will find you something else. Right. And I think I agree with you 100%. I think we forget that we're managing whole people and that they are grown-ups. And we need to treat them as such, and also remind ourselves that we are not their parent, their sibling, their, whatever, their partner. This is to your point, it is a transactional relationship that when we build cultures and are an empathetic leader, we wrap some care and concern and a bubble of empathy and compassion around.
Yeah.
Right. But it is still a transaction. You do the thing, I give you a paycheck.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. And I also think this works when you're talking about how do you manage your manager? Or how do you start to create that relationship with your manager? I'm going to tell a story. Um, so I was working for a gentleman who I'd worked with for a long time before, and who knew who I was, right? Knew how I acted, knew how I reacted. Wanted to push me into different spaces, and he was leaving the company, and I was going to work for a gentleman who I had no relationship with.
Yeah.
And every interaction I'd had with this guy, he was tough, and he was like, I was like, oh my god, this guy is mean. And he had people that had worked with him for years. Like, I was going to be the new kid in this group. Like, I was nervous.
Yeah.
And I sent him an email, and he worked in a different location. Like, he sat with his team in a completely different city. I was the only one, like, all the way in New York City. I
Right.
sent him an email, and I just said, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I'm just going to overshare a little bit because I'm an overshare. I don't know if you know this or not. I'm an
Yeah.
overshare. And I just said, I like, this is who I am. These are some of the things that I do. I'm really excited to like be part of this team. I'm a little nervous about how to communicate with you, but here's how I'm going to start out. Um, and he and I had the best relationship. That one moment of me
Love
just being
that.
super vulnerable allowed him to open up in a way. And he has become, I don't work with him anymore. He's off doing something else, but he was one
Yeah.
of my very favorite leaders because
Yeah.
we just had this moment of like humanity.
Yeah.
Um, and it
Yeah.
allowed us
I
to
love
sort of
that.
like, he didn't have to guess what I was thinking because
No.
we'd broken down the barriers.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard when you work for someone and they don't want to get to know the whole person.
Yeah.
They just want you to fit into their mold,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
don't actually tell you what the mold is. And so
Yeah.
you kind of
Like,
got to guess
right.
exactly.
Well, I
They
think
don't,
what that story exemplifies to me two things that can happen. Like we do need to be willing to say, I need you to understand who I am. And that's what you did. Like you took a risk in that moment of saying, I will be vulnerable and tell you who I am. Right. And then that person returned, they can return one way or the other. Yeah, I
yeah,
hear you. That's great. Like, I don't really care. Right. Like it's under that is the message. I don't care. Just get your work done and we'll be fine. Or they could do that other thing and you could actually build a relationship that is far reaching. That risk requires the vulnerability.
yeah,
Otherwise, you could have just gone in cold, done the job, not taken the risk, and it probably would have turned out very differently.
yeah, 100%
Right.
it would.
And so I think that's so, so important. Yeah, so important. It's funny. It reminds me of when I was working for a guy that I loved working for in Denver. I mean, his name's Russ. I love him. He's one of those people that I will say like, should I do this or this even now? And he's like, you know what to do. Why are you asking me? Right. Like, I'm not your mentor. I'm your friend. Stop asking me. I'm like, but you are my mentor. You just don't know it. But I was working for Russ. I had talked to you on the phone and I was supposed to fly to Seattle and do an interview with Amazon. And so I needed some time off. And so I went to Russ and said, hey, I need a couple days off. I got to go out of town. And he was like, where are you going? And I was like, oh, shit. And I said, I'm going to Seattle. And he's like, why? And he just something he said in hindsight, he said, I knew something was up. He's like, you were acting weird. Something was up. Then you asked me for some days off. And I told him where I was going, which I probably didn't have to, right? I could have just been like, oh, I'm going. I could have lied. I could have said anything, right? But I
Yeah.
didn't. I said, I'm going to Seattle. And he said, why? And I said, I have a job interview with Amazon. And he's like, okay. And I was like, are you mad? And he's like, no, crush it.
Oh,
He's like, go crush it. He's like, if it's what you want, when you come back, we'll figure it out. He's like, if you go and it's not what you want, we'll figure it out. He's like, and while you're gone, I'll think about if I have anything I can do that I think would change your mind. He's like, and then we'll talk about it. And I was like, thanks, Russ. Right? Like, let me pull it together. But it was like freedom to go be good at it and see if it's what I wanted.
yeah,
And we had cultivated that relationship over the course of that whole job while I worked for him. So that I went with him with his hand at my back,
yeah,
supporting me, instead of in my mind being afraid, oh God, I'm gonna have to tell Russ that I might want to go work at Amazon.
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, when I walked back, and he didn't tell anybody else, like, and when I walked back in, he was like, "How'd you do?" And I was like, I think I did okay. And, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "Okay, well, what?" He's like, we can talk about it when you're ready, you know? But I just remember feeling really seen.
Yeah.
Like it was, because he asked me, I think he asked me, I remember he said, like, what's interesting about it for you? And I said, I just want to know if I can do this at that scale. And he was like, that's fair. That's a good reason.
Yeah.
He's like, if you had told me it was just the money, okay, I can probably find you some more money. You know, he's like, but that's not, he's like, that I could maybe try. He's like, I probably can't get what they're doing, but I can get closer. But I want to know why. And I was like, because I want to prove to myself I can do that.
So I love that story for two reasons. I think it really exemplifies because you're still talking fondly about
Oh,
him.
yeah.
You would probably still go work with him. You would pick up a phone
Oh,
call for him.
totally.
And that
Totally.
just shows like we don't have to be so impersonal as
Right.
leaders. And
Yeah.
the second thing is when you said the reason you went to Amazon is because you wanted to see if you could do what you do at that scale. That is the whole reason I applied there in the first place too. I just wanted to see
Yeah.
if I could be good enough.
Yeah.
And it was scary and exciting. Like that was
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
oh my God, can I do that? I
Yeah.
kind of want to try to do that.
Yeah. I had a coaching client this a couple weeks last week or the week before ask me like, is it a good enough reason to want to go somewhere like Google? Because I just want to know if I can. And I'm all, that's why I did it. And he was like, what? And I was like, I said, I continued the process. I went to Amazon for that reason. And when Google came after me, I was like, yeah, all right, I'll go through this interview process. I just wanted to know I could get hired. Like I
Yeah.
didn't even know if I wanted the job, but I was like, can I get Google to beg me to come? Right. I was like, yes, yes, I can. Right.
You know,
And
can you climb the next peak? And
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
I'll try
get why
that.
people climb mountains. I'm not going to climb a mountain, but
Yeah. 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 Cause I want to know if I can. Right. So yeah, I, I totally think that's reasonable. Yeah. And so I think where we've landed is you don't get to be personally offended when someone says they want to go do something else. What you get to be is a leader even in that moment.
yeah, yes.
Congratulations. You get to lead people even in the moment that they say they want to leave.
And it should be a good thing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Like I said, I want the Raouls of the world to say, yeah, and then I told her I wanted to leave and she helped me find a job.
Yeah,
Right. Instead of, and I loved working for her and I was going to miss her.
yeah.
Right. But XYZ. Right.
But I wanted to go see if I could do this other thing over here.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So, hmm. Hmm. So I guess our advice is if you're starting to think like, hey, I might want to do something new, think about the risk it will be to talk to your leader about that. Really think through like, what would I be risking? What could happen? Right. And be willing to start having some conversation if it feels like, if you have that kind of relationship. And if you are a leader and you're looking at your team, start having those really big conversations. Right.
Why would you not?
Right.
Why would you not? Go be
Yes.
a whole leader.
Yes, that is our our advice to you. We send you out into the world to go be a whole leader of a whole human. Go be a whole human leader of a whole human person.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, Marilyn, this was fun as always.
Thanks, Leah.